Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how. Go to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast is with me. Yesterday, we kind of blindsided him and told him there was a trade. Well, there's another one today. No, I'm just kidding. No trade today, Geoff Mosher, but you've had 24 hours to now think about this trade a little bit more. Do you have a better formulated thought than us blindsiding you yesterday during Football at 4?
Yeah, I don't think much changes in since we talked about it yesterday and why they made the deal and the benefits to them to making the deal. I sense that most people think it's a smart deal. Some people might be disappointed that the Eagles aren't using all 3 first-round picks. And I would say that the reality is, as I said yesterday, Mike, I don't think they were ever going to use all 3 first-round picks. Now, I think there's some misconceptions about that. You'll hear some people say they don't want to pay 3 first-round picks money. I don't think that that's the case. I mean, people look at the 5th-year option number and say that it's really high. I mean, you want 3 good players, obviously. I think it's more about where you're picking and the ability then now to have a little bit, more currency for next year. Don't forget, as good as that extra first-round pick is next year, they picked up an extra second-round pick in the next year, which could also be used as they leverage for better draft positioning. Because I didn't realize it at the time, but I think there are 4 teams that have at least 2 picks next year, including the Texans, the Seahawks, the Giants, and I think the Jets. So when you realize that, you realize, well, the Eagles aren't alone in having multiple picks, but that's why maybe those extra picks that they picked up in the deal are going to come in handy.
Yeah, I know. So one of the big takes that out there has been about the quarterback, right? That they add the pick next year to try to get a quarterback. Do you put Jalen Hurts on notice because of this trade now? Is that a clear indication that they're saying we're going to evaluate this year because now we have the capability to get a quarterback in next year's draft or via trade? We can go get one of these veteran players. Kyler Murray, if he's unhappy, we now have 2 first-round picks. So is that trade a clear message to the quarterback?
A clear message, nothing any more clear than the fact that it's already known that the Eagles flirted with trying to get Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. What it does is, to me, serves as a hedge. If Jalen Hurts plays really well this year or well enough that they believe in him as the long-term future, well, then that's a win-win, right? Then they have all these assets to continue to build around him. If they don't play well, then they have enough assets. If he doesn't play well, they have enough assets to go out and get another quarterback. Now, some might say, but now that you have fewer first-round picks this year, you're not supporting Jalen Hurts' development enough. You didn't give him enough to make it fair. And I would say that that's unfair because they still have the same number of picks in the top 3 rounds. They still have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. And I would also tell you that a lot of Howie Roseman's moves that have improved the team over the last few years have come way after the first 3 weeks of free agency. There have been draft moves, there have been late free agency moves, and there have been trades. Like in 2017 when he went out and got Ronald Darby in the middle of training camp. So let's reserve judgment for whether or not Jalen Hurts is fully supported for when they go into the season. If they go into the season with basically this, then I think that's a fair argument. But there's too much time left between then and now to just drop dead say that Jalen Hurts is not supported enough.
Right. So the deal kind of allows them to continue to rebuild this team and continue to build around Hurts, give him the necessary tools, and that gives them a chance to better evaluate him. It's hard to evaluate him with what he had last year, so they're still able to kind of build and give him some more things. Fair or unfair?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say that this offense is terrible. He's got probably the best offensive line in football. He has Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. And you could say what you want about Quez Watkins. He got 600 yards. It's not the best offense in football, but it's not like he was given what the Houston Texans have, which isn't much, right? They have Brandon Cooks, but I can't think of too many, a great tight end that they might have or another really good wide receiver either. And Davis Mills at times looked like a pretty good quarterback, just like Jalen Hurts at times looked like a pretty good quarterback. So I don't want to sit here and act like he's got nothing, and this is totally unfair. I was just addressing those who are saying that they don't feel like Jalen Hurts is surrounded by enough weaponry. And clearly Howie Roseman's moves this offseason, some of the ones he didn't make but tried to make, suggest that they were looking to upgrade the offense.
Let's take a look at, what holes are they still looking to fill, and how are those holes likely to be filled? I think people forget, Geoff, on the offensive side of the ball. Let's kind of focus over there. LeGarrette Blount, that was a guy they got later on in the process. So are those players still out there in areas they still need to fill?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you look at running back and you see Miles Sanders and you see Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, you like what you have in Gainwell. I mean, I think that there's good potential there. I don't know that he's ready to be the number one ball carrier just yet, but that's why Miles Sanders is here, and he's still trying to prove that he wants that he should be here for the long term. But what the committee really lacks is that meat that Jordan Howard gave him, that big bruiser, that downhill style runner that Jordan Howard brought. But guess what? Jordan Howard is still a free agent, and so is Peyton Barber. So is Darrell Williams. So is Melvin Gordon, who I thought had a really nice year last year, splitting carries with Javonte Williams. Sony Michel, Carlos Hyde, or is it Sony Michael? I might get that name wrong. It might be Sony.
You were right the first time.
Oh, okay. Sony Michel. There you go. So there are guys out there that can help the Eagles in a similar way that Jordan Howard did, and Jordan Howard himself remains out there. So I don't think that's an area that you should be concerned about. I think there's plenty of abilities to keep adding to the running backs. And then even wide receiver, we know Jarvis Landry, Will Fuller, A.J. Green. I don't know how much Emmanuel Sanders has in him left, but he's out there. Keelan Cole is a guy. I mean, those first three names alone, though, Landry, Fuller, and Green, show you that if they don't get somebody in the draft, which I think the Eagles will target at least, there are still some pretty good names out there.
Okay, so you say what holes do they still need to fill on the offensive side of the ball? The offensive line would seemingly be fine, right?
Correct.
So nothing there. I mean, I guess you look later in the draft maybe to add some more depth, but I would even suggest, Moshe, they have pretty good depth on this team.
They do have depth. Now, look, Andre Dillard might get traded, so you never know what's going to happen there. And this team just likes to and I don't mean this as a criticism, the opposite. They like to draft good linemen, even if they're deep at that. And I'd be surprised in a draft where they have 10 picks if they don't come out with at least one, probably interior offensive lineman, because they do have age there. Even though they have numbers like you're saying, you've got some pretty good age going on there, or injury history with Sayamalu and Kelsey and Brandon Brooks retiring.
Right now, Andre Dillard. Would he be one of the players? Would he be the most tradable player, do you think?
I think so.
Like
at least the one they'd be most willing to deal with. I think Isaac Sayamalu could possibly be a tradable player, but I don't, obviously the injury history there has to be accounted for, and he doesn't play a glory position like left tackle. He plays guard, so you don't know how much interest there will be, but he does have a friendly contract from his extension a couple of years ago. So I could see teams say, hey, look, it looks like you're coming back with Kelsey there, and you're going to play Landon Dickerson at left guard, and you've got Jack Driscoll and some other guys at right guard. Is Isaac Sayamalu available? Mm-hmm. And I could see the Eagles making him available for the right price.
All right, we're looking at holes that still need to be filled. We feel like the offensive line's pretty good. What about behind Dallas Goedert?
Well, that's an area I think that they can upgrade. They have if you go back to 2017, right? That was a real treat for them at that position. Have Brent Selleck sort of in the midst of passing the torch to Zach Ertz, and then also a guy that they had developed in Trey Burton, who wound up being a big part of the Philly special. in the Super Bowl. You look at them now, and with Zach Ertz gone, you have Goddard, who's unquestionably your number one tight end. But their backup tight end right now is either Richard Rodgers, who may not make the team, or Jack Stoll, who's going to make the team, but he's really a number 3 tight end. So this team could use another number 2 tight end. That's something they could probably get late in free agency, but they probably could also look for that kind of guy in the draft this year, because this is a pretty good tight end for drafts as far as depth. There's not any star, no Hawkinsons, no Fants, no guys who are going to go in the top 5 or 10, but there are good, talented guys who can go in the second or third round and impact the team.
Yeah, I know that. They got a couple of interesting prospects there too. Who was the guy that got hurt last year? The quarterback.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part, and probably why they're probably going to be looking for a number 2 tight end. Although I would argue that even Tyree Jackson, who got hurt, was still a candidate for number 3. But you liked what you saw. Tall guy, former quarterback, 6'7", went out there and really outperformed expectations, could block even a little bit. But he had the back injury in training camp, and then he tore the ACL at the end of the season. So you don't really know when he's going to be able to get onto the field. And he needed a lot of work that he's not going to wind up getting in OTAs.
Yeah, and then, of course, wide receiver, if we take a look there, we know they need some help at that spot. It's just what's the brand? What's the preference? The outside, guy, the slot guy, a big body possession guy. I think you're looking at what complements Devontae Smith, or are you looking to even better Devontae Smith? I guess if you're looking at better Devontae Smith, you probably see someone in the draft that you really like. But I can't imagine someone in the draft is projected to be better than Smith where they're drafting anyway.
Yeah, this is a funny draft. There's a lot of wide receivers who are going to go first 3 rounds. I'm not sure any of them are going to be true, absolute stars in this league. Maybe a Jameson Williams, we'll see how he recovers. Maybe somebody winds up in a really good system with a great quarterback and can maximize the potential. But there's a lot of good receivers who can be number 2s or 1As or slot guys in this draft. So if you're the Eagles, they've already told you based on their moves what they're looking for. They went after Allen Robinson. They didn't get him. They were after Calvin Ridley. It looks like they're looking for a natural outside receiver, somebody who can naturally play that X position, and then you can use Devontae Smith as a movable piece. I think that's where Devontae can really flourish, as opposed to just keeping him on the outsides all the time and having him just run a certain style of route. You want this guy to be able to do everything for you, even move into the slot and run those what they call the 2-way routes, where you have that communication if a defense isn't man and you're manned up with a nickel corner where you can just either cut in or cut out and keep that guy guessing. You want to be able to do that with Devontae Smith. So in order to do that, you need another outside type receiver to be able to move Devontae around. So, Treylon Burks is the Arkansas guy that the Eagles have paid attention to as a big body type of natural X. Garrett Wilson, of course, can play the X, but we'll see there are some guys like Christian Watson who need some work, but obviously is a tremendous athlete, ran a great 40 and showed off his athleticism, the kid from North Dakota State. So there'll be some opportunities.
I've been looking at receivers more.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if the Eagles took a receiver, and I'm not advocating, I'm just saying the guy that I would prefer above all, I think in my mind right now we're about a month still away, would be Wilson. I like him, I think, the best.
Yeah, he's probably, among him and Jameson Williams, probably among the most talented. Jahan Dotson, really good player, but because he's 5'9" or 5'11", maybe, I forget. He's a little shorter. May not be someone you want to put on the outside his entire career, so may not be the best fit there. Same thing with Chris Olave, who's not a very big guy. But, that doesn't mean these guys couldn't come into the system and play really well. I think the big question is, if you draft a wide receiver, Mike, you really still have the same issue of not having a veteran in the room. And, Greg Ward's a veteran. Zach Pascal has played in the league. But you know what I'm sort of talking about, a guy who's going to really take this group underneath the wings. That's why I see an A.J. Brown out there who can still play. Showed you that. I'm sorry, A.J. Green. Out there, he showed you he can play a little bit, or maybe a Jarvis Landry, someone like that you might want to consider bringing in to kind of be the leader of the group while you mature or groom these young kids.
Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, one of the things you mentioned Jordan Howard, Melvin Gordon, those are veteran running backs. So are they more apt to fill that role with another veteran or going late round, like to get that other running back? Is that something they fill in the draft, or is that something they'd rather get a veteran guy like they had with Howard last year?
That's a good point. I mean, ideally, you would like to do it in the draft. Find a guy who's big because he's cost controlled. He's young. You find a guy who can move the chains the way Jordan Howard did. Also, maybe pretty decent at pass protection, which is one of Jordan Howard's strengths. The issue with signing guys like Howard or anybody else whose name I might mention there is that you worry about age and injury history, and you don't necessarily worry about that as much with a young kid that you draft. So I see it as kind of an either or. I don't know if they do both, but you either find one in the draft, and if you don't, you look toward free agency.
Now, wide receiver, again, we look at last year they went into the season, and that's a hole, with no veteran wideout. Now, they brought Zach Pascal in, but do they want to get another veteran to fill that hole, or is that something they prefer in the draft?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. Adam and I both thought that they needed one last year, and they clearly were fine going into the year without a veteran wide receiver. So we still think they need one. They clearly tried to get one. So we'll see if they feel like they can still go into the year without one, or if they're really going to put a high priority on it.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think they would
sign AJ Green to a 1-year deal? He's still out there, so he's obviously not getting what he wants. I mean, what's the harm in that?
Well, right, and that's I don't know. I guess bigger than that. Some of these guys, like the DK Metcalfs, AJ Brown, these guys that were on the last year of their deals, that these teams don't want to give them these big deals. Would that be shocking?
It sounds like the Titans do want to work with A.J. Brown, so I'm not sure he's going to be available.
And it sounds like the Seahawks want to work with DK as much as they wanted to keep Wilson.
See, that's where I wonder if that's more about we'll trade him if you call us up and offer us a bunch of first-round picks because we'd be stupid not to, but we don't have any issue going forward with it. This is not like Russell Wilson where clearly the relationship was over and they were fine with moving on. I would think that a young team like Seattle that is building up wants to keep a good young talent, especially if they wind up getting a quarterback either this year or next year. But they would trade him if someone's going to knock down their door and say, I'll give you 2 first-round picks. I mean, DK Metcalf's a nice player, but I can't think of too many players at his position right now who you just don't trade for 2 first-round picks. I mean, I think that's what Seattle is sort of looking to see if they get their doors blown off.
All right, Geoff Mosher. By the way, you guys reported over at Inside the Birds a while back that Sauce Gardner would visit the Eagles this weekend. That would be a trade up, though, right?
So, I mean, most likely, yes. And I also reported on top of that today that Oregon's pass rusher, Kayvon Thibodeau, is also slated for a visit with the Eagles before the draft, one of those 30 visits. So both of those guys are, top prospects. You might see Thibodeau fall out of the top 10 because there's a lot of different pass rushers. There's also a decent amount of left tackles who are going to push some guys down. Gardner, I'd be shocked if he fell out of the top 10. I think it's more likely he goes in the top 5 to 7. But the Eagles, keep in mind, the Eagles really liked Patrick Surtain last year. And they talked about moving up to get him along with Devontae Smith. Not both, but I'm saying if there were conversations about moving up for either. Denver took Surtain 9th. So then they went and were able to get Devontae Smith there. So I don't think the Eagles are shy about drafting a cornerback in the first round, even though they haven't done it since 2002. I believe. So Lito Shepherd, I believe, was the last time they used a first-round pick on a cornerback. So I don't think they're shy about it. And they've got 2 picks, and Howie will be the first to tell you about the percentages, right, of where you're drafting and what the percentages are. And at 15 and 18, you're in that kind of 50 to 55% success rate type of pick. You package those and move up into the top 10, 11, whatever it is, then you're talking about a higher hit percentage and more elite caliber of an athlete. So keep that in mind.
All right, that's a good point. And Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams, that's 3 guys last year. Gainwell, I don't know what you think about McPherson, Teron Jackson.
Hard to say.
What's that? Yeah.
It's hard to say. We haven't really seen
that group. But the first three and Gainwell, that's four guys in last year's draft we feel pretty good about, right?
Yeah, as of right now, I would say so. Now, you know how things are. I mean, we felt great about Carson Wentz after 2017.
True.
I don't expect any of these guys to fall off the map, but Dickerson has the injury history, so if he were ever to be hurt, everybody would be like, see, that's why you shouldn't have drafted him if he winds up having another knee. But all those guys did perform well as rookies.
Yeah, and then you got Hurts. Taylor, I guess, looks like he's at least something as opposed to you thought he was absolutely nothing. Driscoll, nice player. Watkins gave you a little something. Dillard hasn't performed much on the field, but probably capable if he had to. Sanders, a nice player. So Goddard, Maddox, Sweat, those three guys. So they have been finding 2 and 3 guys in the last couple, probably the last 4 draft classes here. We ready to start saying that they're turning the page on the draft a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 2020 draft is sort of to be determined because Taylor has been hurt so much and really hasn't done that much for the team. And
Hurts is a big factor there, right?
Jalen Hurts is starting sort of de facto. He was not supposed to be a starter, and he got pushed into it, and he had a nice year. But if he goes out and wins 6 games this year, then no one's going to think that was such a great pick or great decision. So there's some influx with that draft. And then, of course, Kevon Wallace, I think, was from that draft, and he can't get on the field too much, and that's not good for them either because they need safety help.
All right, Geoff Mosher, we'll take a look at some defensive issues, the holes they need to fill on that side as well. Tomorrow here on the Sports Bash Live, football at 4, getting closer to the draft. We had some draft news coming up as well. We'll tell you here on the Sports Bash. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, tomorrow, Mosher will be back for another edition of Football at 4. Geoff Mosher, take care, bud.
Can't get enough of me. See you, Mike.